should it be a man? Because the Chancellor thinks that she's been treated in a sexist manner by being described as Rachel from accounts and suggestions that she's out of her depth. Would a bloke do a better job, Mel Stride?
I am absolutely solid on the fact that it could be a man or a woman. It makes no difference. This isn't a question of gender. It's a question of economic competence. And I think all this mansplaining business is a bit of chaff. It's a bit of a distraction to try and get away from the basic facts, which we've got unemployment at a 5-year high. We've got anemic, flatlining growth. We've got inflation that's almost double the level it was under us, and we've got an economy that's in a very bad position, saddled up with debt, and we're paying 100 billion a year just on servicing that debt at the moment, and yet this government's going out and borrowing more money and spending more money and driving up inflation and putting us in a very precarious situation.
How much responsibility, let's be honest now, how much responsibility should the Conservatives take for what this budget is turning out to be, in the sense of all of the economic indicators that you've listed there? We could have equally applied to the last government, couldn't we?
Well, let's do that. So on the day of the general election, we had gone through a really difficult period with COVID and inflation coming as a result of the Ukraine-Russia war. But nonetheless, we had near record level of employment, near record low level of unemployment. We had inflation down bang on target at 2%. We had the highest growing economy in the G7, and we'd had 13 consecutive months of real wage growth. So that is the economy that Rachel Reeves inherited, and it hasn't taken her long to have put us in a very, very different position, I'm afraid.
But we also had, and you're failing to mention it, low growth, high tax and high spend. So the GB audience looks at you and looks at Labour and everybody giving their lines and just says, well, plus ça change. It's just a continuation of the status quo that was established for 14 years by the Conservatives.
So I think, look, there's a very different set of circumstances. Rachel Reeves has been the author of her own misfortune. It was her who chose to load a load of taxes on businesses and killed growth. They talked down the economy. They borrowed and spent a lot of money, which has driven up inflation and interest rates. And it's therefore no surprise we've ended up in this parlous situation. The situation during the last few years of the last Conservative administration were that we had COVID, which shrank the UK economy by over 10% overnight. You'd have to go back to the Great Frost of 1714 to have had any sign of that kind of shock hitting our economy. And of course we had the Ukraine-Russia war that put up inflation at the back end of 2022 to over 11%, and we had to bring that down. So nobody at that time was suggesting we shouldn't have been spending the money we were on supporting millions of jobs and households up and down the country. We did that, and we did it, Camilla, on the back of our previous record of having got the deficit down since 2010 when we took over from Labour. So we did it because we had a stronger economy that was able to do that. So I think these
you did it on the back of taxpayers, I think. Also, I mean, when you talk about the difficulty of COVID, and we appreciate that, we appreciate furlough, there are many that think that Rishi Sunak, as Chancellor, completely mismanaged it, and no mention at all of the billions of COVID loan fraud that we had to also shoulder the burden for economically.
Look, inevitably, whenever something as cataclysmic as COVID, which, as I say, shrank the economy overnight by 10%, and people were then, at that point, speculating we'd have mass unemployment at a level that we'd never seen in our country in perhaps a century, big dramatic things had to happen, interventions, and it had to be done at speed.